Throughout the known galaxy, from Deep Space Nine to the New Frontier, from the Delta Quadrant to the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, the sudden reactivation of the Iconian gateways has destabilized interstellar relations between planets and cultures previously separated by countless light years. An honor roll of valiant commanders has leaped through separate gateways to face the unknown. And now, it is up to Captain Jean-Luc Picard to find the ageless Iconians themselves and reveal the mystery of where the Iconians disappeared to many long eons ago, and what they want now. The answers lie on the other side, and that is where Picard has gone. Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Other Side by Robert Greenberger brings the Gateways saga to a spectacular conclusion. Picard had stepped through the Iconian gateway found aboard the flagship Petra vessel, and now he emerged into a forest that sang with bird calls and swarmed with large insects. A short distance from his position, he saw a large gleaming dome building. Up closer, he saw red and orange filigree snake from the dome's base up toward the top. The oval dome itself was a cobalt blue, shining wetly in what he presumed to be the late afternoon sun. Sweat had already begun to trickle down his neck, and he realized how warm it was. Too warm to be pleasant, and humid enough to indicate it had recently rained. He opened his tricorder. With some alarm, he found the instrument dead. His right hand reached for his phaser and saw that it too registered no power. With greater caution, Picard began walking around the dome. There was little doubt he needed to get inside and speak with the people. The ones he hoped were the one true Iconian people. No one had seen them in over 200 millennia. His boots beat down wildflowers, thick ropey grass strands, and even fallen twigs. The rain helped moisten everything, so it kept his movements quiet. To his practiced eye, Picard noted that everything outside the dome structure was left to its natural state. The air seemed pure, so the dome gave off no harmful emissions. It also made no sound. There was not even a hint of a power current. After 20 minutes, Picard estimated he'd managed his way around a third of the dome. Nothing had changed, although the sun had dried out more of the surroundings.
Captain Picard, welcome to our world.
He whirled about and looked up, for the figure measured at least 7.5 feet tall. She was a willowy figure, not much in the way of musculature. She wore a dark maroon dress that reached the tops of her covered feet. Picard studied her without trying to seem rude about it.
Do you know why I have come?
Of course. We have been studying your activity.
Can you help me?
Without answering, she turned and raised her left arm, revealing a plate of metal covering her forearm. A panel, set within the base of the structure, opened. The woman turned and began walking with a steady gait inside, and he presumed he was to follow. The moment Picard passed the threshold, the door began to seal itself, and he felt the modulated, cooler air for which he was thankful. The corridor was devoid of decoration and was mostly silver and metallic. She finally turned left, going down a similar corridor, but after less than a minute, extended her left arm once more. The room he found himself in was immense, with a gigantic view screen directly before him. On the screen was the gateway he'd found on the Petra ship. To his left were long benches, and seated on them were 5 others, 2 more women and 3 men, all in similar maroon clothing. A woman on the bench turned to him.
Captain Picard, you have arrived here when we sought to stay apart from galactic society.
If you are truly the Iconians, then you know it is your technology we seek to control, to stop what others have begun.
What has gone wrong? The gateway's function?
Picard cleared his throat and succinctly explained how the Petra found the technology and sought to sell it to further their personal goal of extending their empire. They knew enough to turn on the entire network, but not how to shut it down or even program direction. As a result, The unchecked access had resulted in widespread trouble, even loss of life.
You have a bright people, Captain. We have studied you since the first gateway was activated in many hundreds of years. Your response has been, in the past, to blow up our technology.
The captain inwardly winced at the realization. The first gateway that had been discovered on a Kalandan outpost a century ago was destroyed by Spock on the Enterprise. Other gateways had all been destroyed as well by Starfleet captains. He could see their point.
If you have studied us, then you know such destruction is a last choice. We would much rather simply turn them off, preserving your legacy.
One of the men addressed Picard.
Yes, we have seen that.
The woman spoke again.
When the first gateway was used by these Petra, it activated an alarm here. We had no idea what it meant. It has been so long since the last such alert. But we finally figured out that it meant our equipment was in use. Our leader at the time had to consult the computer records to find out what the alarm signified, and what we were to do.
Another man on the bench stood and gestured to the other 5 Iconians in the room.
We were formed. We are the sentries, gathered when our equipment is in use. Our laws say we are to monitor the use, record the species that employ the gateways, and watch for incursion. We left your space to be on our own, to pursue new interests and not to be bothered.
Picard frowned at the answer. The Iconians built their empire, invented technology far beyond their peers, and just walked away from it all? What could they be building now?
Captain Picard, the use of the entire network was something none of us had witnessed before. We were intrigued to see what would happen. All you people flitting here and there like insects drawn to nectar.
Picard found an anger building within him he wanted to avoid.
You've just watched people steal, people die?
Our laws say we are to watch, remain vigilant in case we are threatened.
Picard approached them, and no one moved.
I'm sworn to protect my people, and I need your help to do that. I need to know how to shut down the entire network.
The laws are vague about helping other species.
Picard had expected something different from these people, and wanted to keep his disappointment private.
If I shut down the gateways, won't that enable you to return to your studies?
Yes, it would.
Then help me, please.
The woman walked over to the console of controls. After she flipped 4 cobalt blue buttons, information streamed across a panel.
Captain, the computer records show we do not have the control mechanism here. It seems our ancestors left the controlling device on the last world we visited before settling here. The records refer to a master resonator, but I can access no details. We can send you to that world to seek the device.
The captain absorbed the disheartening news. He'd come a great way to seek these people, and they seemed far from enlightened. Maybe they were closer to the title, Demons of Air and Darkness, than he ever wanted to admit.
Do the records say what I am to do with the device?
She shook her head, but one of the other women spoke up.
The gateways are attuned to one another. So I have believed that the resonator can be inserted into any control panel and close down the entire system.
And once I find the master resonator, how do I return to my ship?
Through a gateway, of course.
Why did you leave our region?
Our presence threatened to tamper with the natural order on too many worlds. We migrated across space until we reached here. Since then, we have abandoned contact with other people, concentrating on studying realms our gateways could not reach.
Picard looked at them and realized that however great the Iconians were 200,000 years in the past, these people were far removed from them. Whatever realities they studied kept them from the one they lived in, and they were clueless how to act. His anger dissipated, and all he felt was pity.
I cannot waste time. If I'm to seek this master resonator, then send me.
One of the men rose and walked to the console. He labored over the controls.
I have found the world. Captain, I'm not sure I speak for all, but for myself, I wish you luck. I too do not want to see these gateways destroyed. It might be nice to visit newfound friends.
A gateway formed in the room, merely a rip in reality, large enough for one man to enter. There was one location in sight, a lush green world, not dissimilar from the one they stood on. Without a backward glance, Picard once more stepped into the gateway. Deanna Troi, carefully cupping her mug of hot chocolate, curled her feet underneath her legs and stared at the view screen in the captain's quarters. She disliked the decor and would have preferred to let the Marco Polo's real captain keep his space, but he was far from his starship and she was in temporary command. Any change, Will? Will Riker, who was on the view screen, shook his head. He was in his personal quarters on the Enterprise, just a few hundred kilometers away. Nothing at all, Deanna. The captain's been gone for 6 hours without a word. She sipped at her chocolate before asking about the detained Petra leader. And Doral? Still sitting in his guest quarters, looking at images of his remaining ships. They're down to 48, and it's getting a little cramped for them. The odds improve, don't they, Will? Our 16 ships against their 48 is still 3-to-1 odds. Just talking to him made Deanna feel better, and kept the harsh reality of their situation just a little further away. Will, what's to become of the Petra? Their drive to expand their reach means getting them home during their lifetime is impossible. Doral can't even say for certain if the Petra Empire even exists anymore. They remain close to the galactic center, way beyond any portion of space any of us ever have explored. Troi sipped her hot chocolate in silence for a moment, wondering what progress was being made by their captain, who stepped through the Iconian gateway found aboard Doral's lead Petra vessel. 6 hours without knowing what he found on the other side. His orders had been strict. No one was to follow him through. After Picard stepped through the gateway to the other side, the good news was there was no dampening field on the verdant planet. The bad news was nothing technological was showing up on the tricorder screen. There were plenty of life signs. The planet was teeming with humanoid life, birds, animals, and insects. But there was nothing to imply anything more than primitive development. As a result, Picard was faced with the full impact of non-interference directives. He had to somehow locate the master resonator in a manner that prevented altering the culture he was sure to find. He noticed the faint aroma of cooking meat. First, it told him there were intelligent people nearby. Second, it provided a direction. A well-worn path from the trees indicated that people used this area. It made sense there was likely to be an encampment of some sort nearby. His trail led him to the forest's edge, which opened up to a small village. Before entering, he stopped to study the people. Like the Iconians, they were tall, thin folk. Their skin was copper-colored, darkened by the sun. Each wore what appeared to be cured animal skins for clothing, and all carried walking sticks topped with ornate carvings. The tricorder also told him one important detail. The food being cooked was safe for a human to eat. One of the men caught a glimpse of Picard. With long strides, a group of men hurried toward the captain. None made threatening moves, which pleased him. Picard addressed them.
Hello.
They all stared back at him. After a moment, the men tried to repeat the word.
Hello.
Picard pointed to himself and said his last name.
Picard.
The men pointed to themselves and repeated the word.
Picard.
They seemed remarkably pleased with their progress. Picard made minute steps toward them, trying to make certain the translator picked up the words to begin processing. The leader gestured toward the village. On his way toward the center of the settlement, Picard took time to notice the decorations on the buildings, and he came to realize each home had some piece of sophisticated technology as door hangings, more decorative than anything else. Clearly there had been a superior civilization on this planet, but something had happened, and darkly he fretted over the Iconians' role in the planet's past. Finally, the translator began working. The captain smiled.
Greetings. I am Picard, and I've come from a long way away.
The man he presumed to be the village leader came toward him, a huge grin on his face.
Picard, we welcome you. I am Hamish, elder of the village.
Hamish, I've come from far away seeking a special item, a very old item.
A woman spoke up.
Why do you seek this object?
I have many people in trouble at home, and ones wiser than I tell me it will help. It is the way of my people to ask for help when we must. We in turn offer help to those who ask.
Hamish smiled.
Picard, are you from the West?
Truthfully, his path led west, but he was not of the West.
My travels have taken me in all directions.
As I expected, young gods on their ordeal must have traveled the world to gain their granita.
Picard couldn't even begin to imagine what a granita implied, but being called a young god set off internal warning bells. He'd been mistaken for a god once before by a low-tech culture, and it was not an experience he was eager to relive. Several other old men approached Hamish, and they clustered, whispering back and forth. Then Hamish spoke.
Picard, we think you must travel to the city. It is but 3 days' walk from here. It is filled with many unknown things, and it may hold your heart's desire.
Poetic, he mused, but accurate. There was nothing he wanted more than to find the resonator and return to the Enterprise. He sniffed, and then realized there was one more thing he desired. Dinner.
Very well. I shall start at sunrise, if you would be so kind as to provide me with directions.
After he ate and then slept, Picard was considerably more comfortable when he woke the following morning. An hour later, he was on a worn path leading away from the village, heading in a southeastern direction. Hamish had insisted on giving him 2 skins of water and some dried meats. Later, as he skirted the edge of a forest, he could hear a stream or river. This pleasant world was well on its way to full recovery from whatever the Iconians left behind. The sun was not too hot compared to yesterday, and Picard hoped he would see the city before nightfall. Within time, Picard noticed tracks in the path, parallel ruts that indicated some form of wheeled vehicle had been by. Less than an hour later, he heard the sounds of concerned voices. He quickened his pace and hurried forward. Within a few minutes, the road rounded a bend, and he saw the remains of a wagon teetering over a huge rock and pinning a man underneath. Watching in fear were women and children, dressed differently than in the village Picard had visited. Picard saw they were paralyzed to the point of inaction, so he stepped forward and approached the wagon.
Don't be scared. Help has arrived.
All he needed to do was lift up an edge of the wagon so the man could be freed. He took several deep breaths, focusing his energies. Then, placing his back to the wagon, he firmly gripped the corner, planted his feet far apart, and began exerting his strength. Finally, he felt the wagon rise.
Quickly, come clear him away.
When the man was dragged clear, Picard let the heavy wood slip from his fingers. Picard then slowly walked over to check on the injured person. One of the women bowed to him.
You saved him. Thank you, young god.
Picard turned towards the path, but a young girl stepped forward.
Why leave us so quickly, young god? At least, let us feed you supper.
Picard glanced at the sky and noticed it growing deeper in color. He had hoped to even glimpse the city today, but it seemed not to be. So he smiled at her and accepted the invitation. As the villagers set up camp, he sat back and spoke quietly with the children. They told him of their village, which was beyond the city, and how they loved traveling. One young boy seemed quite taken with Picard's actions, but didn't act like Picard was a god, which the captain found refreshing. Instead, the boy asked questions about lifting the wagon, how his muscles felt. His name was Chonik.
I've been to the city once. It's like no place you've ever seen. Tall huts, mostly broken, with weird-looking vines connecting some of them together. The animals all avoid it, so it's a good place to hide.
Picard tried to imagine the place and wondered how much of it still functioned. He smiled at Chonik.
I'll find out for myself soon, won't I?
Chonik smiled back.
And I'm going to show you.
Picard was alarmed by the pronouncement. He had already learned Chonik had attached himself to this traveling party and was from one of the villages nearby. The last thing he needed was to be responsible for someone's life while he was rushing to save countless others.
I can't do that. I must move quickly, and I won't be able to properly look after you.
Oh, I'll be looking after you, young god Picard. After all, I know how to get in there, and you don't.
The next morning, Picard checked to make sure his equipment was still where he had secured it the night before. The captain had decided to use the phaser and tricorder as little as possible, refusing to raise the notion that a god, young or otherwise, might need such devices. After breakfast, Picard and Chonik were ready to depart.
Chonik, how far to the city?
We could see it just after midday.
Excellent. Then let's begin.
The trail skirted the forest, but within 2 hours, it had thinned and ended, opening up to wide fields that seemed full of grains growing tall in the sun. After another hour or so, Chonik excitedly pointed out the first glimpse of the city's silhouette. Sure enough, spires and skyscraping buildings were topping the horizon. The captain estimated the city to be perhaps half a kilometer in width and another hour or two away. What amazed Picard the most was the utter silence as they got closer to the city. Yet after a time, they heard angry voices. Chonik shrugged to say he didn't know who the people were.
The nearest village has to be at least a day's walk to the east.
When Picard heard a baby's cry, he decided it was time for action. Breaking into a sprint, the captain soon left Chonik behind. In less than a minute, he spotted a cluster of people forming a loose circle. Outside the circle was an infant, crying pitifully, naked and unattended. As he approached, the circle broke open and the captain could see a woman, her rough spun clothes in tatters, lying on the ground. Standing over her, yelling epithets without stop, was an older man. Each person was holding something hard and metallic that was oval in shape at one end and spiky at the other.
What is going on? Why is this baby being ignored?
The baby is a sin. What should have been mine is not. I was not home the 8 turns ago when this would have started.
Picard looked down at the woman, who was quietly sniffling into her one intact sleeve.
And you will do what?
The man looked at Picard as if he too were a newborn.
I brought her here for the testing. She will live or die. If she survives, then her innocence is clear and she can bring the baby home.
Picard disliked this notion of justice and felt he needed to act.
Has she spoken for herself?
Haven't asked.
Picard reacted with instinct, not thought, and rushed the man, knocking into him. The weapon's weight in his hands forced him to tumble backwards to the ground. Now it was Picard who loomed over the man.
Where's the justice in using something so sharp? You want the truth? Ask her. If she betrayed you, then let justice be done.
With that, Picard walked over to the infant, whose cries had grown intermittent. He scooped it up, and instantly the baby grew silent. Gently, he checked for bruises, saw none, and walked back to the woman. She was sitting up now, and gingerly, he handed over the child.
Tell the truth.
One of the women turned to him.
What are you?
Just a traveler, and I'm on my way.
He shot a glance at Chonik, giving him a warning look that said speak nothing of godhood. Chonik looked up at Picard as they moved away.
She might have deserved something.
Yes, Chonak, a fair hearing. The accused must have a chance to speak in their defense. Where I come from, we have a very complicated set of laws so the innocent are protected and the guilty are found out with facts, not guesses.
Wow, that's very involved. How do you keep all those things straight?
Protecting our laws is a trade given much importance in my land.
All those laws and rules and things could make my head hurt.
Picard smiled. Or give you a reason to live. Still, you're too young to worry about a trade. First, we must complete this adventure. The city was close now, and what Picard wanted to do was arrive and begin his hunt. From his tricorder, he'd already learned that the city had no electronic defenses, at least none he could detect. Weeds, plants, even the occasional tree had taken root in the outskirts of the city, choking the streets. Thick ivy-like vines practically enveloped the smaller buildings. The youth led the captain to a wild, untamed section filled with tall bushes. Finally, he ran towards a structure that seemed indistinguishable to Picard from the others.
This is it. I cut my way through here the last time I came to the city.
Sure enough, Picard could see some of the thick ivy cut away, revealing hand and footholds that allowed one to reach an open second-story window. Within minutes, the two climbed up and stood in a small room. The contents of the room were shattered, splintered plastic, metal, and other materials. With his tricorder, Picard took readings and pictures.
What is that, Picard? You keep pulling it out.
I call this a tricorder, and it lets me take recordings or pictures, among other things. It's a very powerful and useful tool to help me explore.
Chonak merely shrugged and walked to the doorway, leading to the rest of the building. Picard followed, trying to imagine how he would ever find the master resonator in a city this size. When they were well into the city, night fell. With what light remained, they made camp and ate.
Picard, how do we know where to look?
That, Chonak, is an excellent question.
The question was on his mind long before the boy asked. Aimless wandering would mean the resonator might be days away from discovery. He was looking for some kind of clue, maybe something in the placement of the device, or the architecture, or ornamentation. Dawn's light woke Picard, and he marveled at the beauty of unfettered nature replacing what had been a superior technology. He had to find the master resonator today and return home. Picard took a sip from a water skin and noted the intricate swirling pattern that had been etched onto one side. Staring at it, he let his mind wander for a moment, and he thought about the odd pointed end of the device nearly used on the accused woman the day before. Its oval nature was similar to the pattern on the skin, and it occurred to Picard that the dome structure on the new Iconian world was more oval than circular. Could the oval shape be significant? Chonak was still asleep, and Picard turned on his tricorder to study the exterior of the domed home of the Iconians. There was filigree work over the dome that he merely glanced at. That is, until his mind wandered for a second and his eyes lost their sharp focus, and suddenly all he saw were the spikes in different places of the filigree's design. Picard hastily grabbed a stick and sketched on the ground. He drew in the spikes as if the filigree were on a grid, similar to the grid of city streets through which he was searching. A picture emerged, with the spikes pointing like arrows to a specific section of the grid. Could they be pointing to the location of the city's gateway? From memory, Picard estimated where he and Chonak entered the city and their approximate location. With a silent curse, he realized they would be far from the specified location, but at least he had an idea of which direction to walk. Gently, he woke Chonak, and soon they were moving again, this time in a direction that Picard hoped would bring a resolution to the problem. They arrived at the targeted building as the sun was already starting towards the horizon. It would be dark within a few hours. Compared to the rest of the city, the building was nondescript. If it truly housed a gateway, one could not tell by design or ornamentation. The outside was reds and oranges with 2 windows missing. The first floor was filled with pillars supporting the entire building, but also had a series of rooms that seemed uniform in size and shape. There was a very wide staircase spiraling down below ground level.
Chonik, we need to build torches so we can explore below. Can you find 2 very sturdy, heavy wood poles, branches, or sticks?
Despite being tired from all the walking, Chonik sprinted from the building out to the streets in search of supplies. He soon came back, dragging 2 branches. Within 5 minutes, the torches were cut to size and ignited. The boy marveled when Picard used his phaser to light the torches. It only served to reinforce for Chonik the notion of Picard being a god. To the captain, it was mild contamination, since Chonik could tell what he saw and not be believed. As they descended the stairs with the torches, Picard saw that the basement extended some 30 meters down. At the bottom of the stairs, he saw illustrations of landscapes that were unfamiliar: snowscapes, oceans, mountain views, and cities. Colored circles in the walls seemed to form directional patterns, most leading to his left. The colored circles converged down one hallway, and Picard chose to follow them. He was rewarded with the hall opening up to a large chamber. In the center was a familiar control panel, one he first saw on a world countless light years away. This was the Gateway Control Room. Chonik looked up at Picard.
What does that do?
When it works, Chonik, it could help people find their way to other locations. It's very old equipment, and I doubt it functions anymore.
In reality, he knew it would have to work to send him home, and there was little doubt that the equipment still functioned. He studied the chamber carefully, looking for someplace the master resonator might be housed. The walls seemed smooth, and in the console itself, he found no hidden panels or hatches. It grew frustrating, as Picard knew he had found his goal, but the ultimate object eluded his grasp. Chonik, growing bored and standing in the same place, had been wandering in and out of the chamber, using the hallway as a place to run. At one point, Picard watched him with a sad smile. So full of energy and eager to help, but everything was beyond his grasp. However, Picard watched a little more and saw something catch the youth's eye. Chonik walked along the hallway with his torch and looked closely at a section just before the hall opened into the chamber. He placed his tiny hand on a section of wall and pushed, revealing a doorway mostly hidden in the shadows. Picard quickly stepped over to him, their torches dancing together above them, and peered into the newly discovered room. The air was stale and musty to Picard, but that wasn't important. What was vital was the rack set against the far wall. On it was the master resonator. He was sure of it. What confused him at first, though, was that there were 14 of them, identical to one another in size and shape. The resonator was larger than Picard's fists together, but flat and copper-colored. On top were 4 keys, 2 amber, 1 brown, and 1 a deeper shade of brown. He stepped towards them and touched one, feeling the cool metal. Picking it up, it felt light, and as he turned it over, he saw indentations that at first puzzled him.
Is this it, Picard?
Yes, I think so, Chonik. I just didn't expect to find so many.
To date, he had never encountered spare parts of any sort. The Iconians built things to last, which meant all 14 resonators were meant to be used. As Will Riker sat forward in the command chair on the bridge of the Enterprise, he shook his head in frustration and turned to Data.
The captain has been gone days, and despite the fact we have the Petra ships in a dampening field, they've managed to blow up one of our vessels.
The android turned to Riker.
Commander, how much longer will you give Captain Picard?
Riker settled back in the command chair, not at all comfortable.
Just a little bit more. Without him and the solution, we might have to destroy all the gateways.
That, sir, would be a loss to the Quadrant.
I see you've not lost your sense of understatement, Mr. Data.
Yet from reports Riker had read a little while earlier, 2 planets were already critically crippled by the Iconian technology, adapting native energy to keep the gateways powered. A small war had broken out in an unaligned star system, and raids by Cardassian pirates were reported along the Klingon border. Riker considered the chronometer and mentally decided on 6 more hours, short enough so he could act before too many more lives might be lost. Picard walked back to the console, hefting one of the resonators, holding it above the control panels. Gently, he lowered the device, which fit snugly atop a cluster of amber and blue keys to the console's right. The entire resonator began to glow, startling Chonik, who backed away several feet. A small ball of light began to form above the resonator, and one of the amber keys began to blink. The light grew in size and began to alter shape, forming a sphere that swelled to engulf the top of the control panel. Within the sphere, smaller swirls began forming, and Picard realized that it resembled a model of the Big Bang Theory. As the seconds passed, the stars began twinkling, and the image altered slowly as galaxies formed. The familiar spiral shape of the Milky Way filled the light bubble, and then one at a time, purple lights began to show themselves in a concentration that Picard recognized as the Alpha Quadrant. In all, there were 13 purple lights. His fingers brushed the amber blinking light. Chonik stated the obvious.
It didn't like you touching it.
Picard frowned and considered the likely options. After a minute or more, he realized he had no choice. He needed to return with the 13 keys, then get them to the highlighted gateways. He suspected all 13 consoles would not do anything useful unless they were all touched at once. 14 pieces to a single key, and somehow the Iconians, whom he met on the other planet, didn't know that. Using his tricorder, he recorded the light patterns on the console and the purple markers in the image. The Enterprise computers would be able to match this map against their own star charts, and adjusting for the time difference since these maps were first recorded, figure out where the resonators needed to go. Picard strode to the antechamber and emptied his small bag of dried provisions. He then began filling it with the 13 resonators. What troubled him was the 14th key. Someone might need to activate it from this planet. Chonik would have to get involved, but that raised concerns over tampering with the culture. But what harm could there be in asking a boy to press a button?
Chonik, I need to return to my people with these. All of them must be fit onto similar machines, and then all of us might need to press the blinking button.
How will I know, Picard?
I'm not sure, to be honest, that it will be necessary. I think the machine will do something to indicate it is ready for you to do your part, but the result must be that it will turn itself off.
Chonik smiled and nodded a few times.
It will be safe, right? Then I will have helped a young god.
The captain broke into a happy grin.
Yes, but once this is over, it will be our secret. He returned to the console and studied it. His right hand began flipping switches, as he recalled doing on Dural's battered Petra ship. A gateway sprang to life near the far wall. Chonik began to walk toward it, but Picard called him back.
But what is it, Picard?
It's called a gateway. Picard continued to fiddle with the controls, hoping he could at least find a starship's bridge. There! He spotted the Forge walking across the rear of the bridge. It was time. Turning, he saw Chonik watch the gateway intently.
They dress like you. Is that where the young gods live?
They are my companions, and we try and do the right thing much like you. However, it is time I go home myself. I need to step through the gateway and leave you to wait. I can't tell you how long it will be. Definitely more than a day.
Okay, Picard. You can count on me.
Thank you, Chonik. With that,
The captain straightened his uniform and at the right moment leapt into the gateway. Geordie LaForge was crossing the Enterprise bridge, a pad in his hand, and Riker knew it was coming time to make a decision. He didn't want to make it. He didn't necessarily feel as if he was the right officer to decide the fate of the Iconian legacy. Riker studied the engineer's recommendations as he strolled toward the ready room. He was so absorbed with the information, he did not notice the crewman coming his way, and they collided. Once on the carpeted floor, Riker looked up and saw Picard's smiling face.
Sir. At ease, Will.
Both men scrambled to their feet and were the center of attention.
Is everything all right, Captain? Did you find the answer?
Picard patted the bag full of resonators that remained at his side.
Yes, I believe so, Will.
Quickly, Riker updated the captain on what had transpired, and in turn, Picard explained his planet jumping and search for the resonators. He handed the tricorder to Data and asked him to begin the required analysis. A few hours later, a refreshed Picard sat at the conference table with his crew. He had asked Captain Troy to patch in from her post on the Marco Polo to get her input. Data was standing by the monitor screen that showed a stellar map with the 13 purple sites highlighted. The pattern of dispersal does not as yet make sense. All are located on planets, and fortunately all 13 planets still exist. All are within Klingon, Romulan, Ferengi, or Federation space, aside from 2 that are within the former Thelonian Empire. Picard frowned briefly, but nodded.
How do we get the 13 resonators into position?
I have endeavored to work out a travel plan. It will require relaying the resonators to fast ships from here. My initial plan indicates it will take some 28.5 hours if every ship makes its scheduled rendezvous. This will require the Enterprise and other ships to leave the area, spreading the resonators to others. Picard nodded.
Go to work, Data.
Troy spoke from the adjacent view screen.
Captain, what about the Petraw?
I have not come up with a satisfying answer as yet. As we leave to deliver the resonators, I will need the Cobb and Glory to take charge of the Petraw ships until we return.
LaForge spoke up.
The Petraw cannot be trusted, Captain, and I recommend we disable as many of the ships as possible.
Prepare your plans, Geordie. Will, contact the vessels we'll be meeting with. Deanna, relay the word to other captains in the area. Let's try to leave within the hour. Dismissed.
Quickly and efficiently, the crew stood and went about their business, and Picard was left alone in the observation lounge. While it felt good to be home, he disliked waiting more than a day to conclude the business at hand. And he kept thinking back to the world and little Chonic, faithfully waiting for the signal that would help protect the galaxy from chaos. For 10 hours since they left the Petraw ships, the Enterprise had been cruising along at Warp 9 with no incidents. It was carrying 3 of the resonators. At the same time, there was the specter of ongoing chaos, represented by the still functioning gateways. Wars had broken out. Natural disasters were occurring more frequently as the ancient technology began to harm the worlds they once serviced. If Picard was right, the 14 resonators would make it possible to close down the gateways. Soon, the Enterprise transported 2 of the resonators to other fast ships, and with 1 left, headed to its final destination. The planet was barren and desolate. So small and unimportant, the stellar cartographers never bothered to give it a name. Starfleet's records indicated no one had ever been there. Picard stared at the view screen. Down below was a gateway. LaForge looked up from his console.
The gateway's functioning like all the others, and seems to have huge energy reserves.
Geordie, transport down with me, in case there's something unusual with the technology.
With that, Picard stood and strode off the bridge, heading straight down to the planet. Finally, down on the lifeless planet and before the gateway, Picard placed the resonator on the console. At the same time, he knew that other Starfleet captains were placing resonators on the consoles on the other 12 planets. After the map of the Alpha Quadrant was displayed with the 14 purple markers, the purple lights began to wink off. Picard wondered if it meant the link was being broken, that the gateway network was shutting down. Picard's eyebrows rose in surprise as the lights shifted, pulsating a bit, and then a face greeted him. The features matched the Iconians he met only days ago. It was a placid female countenance. It spoke, but in a language Picard had never heard before. After a sentence, it seemed to wait for a reply. Then it tried again, this time with another language. Again, the silent wait, and again, another language. Finally, the words were in French, his native tongue.
How may I help you, Captain Picard?
How do I disengage the gateways?
Our controls work both verbally and manually.
Please, shut down the gateway network.
Configuring the relays.
The lights on the console went dim.
Networks closed down. Relays disconnected. Do you require anything further?
Computer, could the system have been deactivated by any of the 14 stations?
No. The master resonator works off the biosignature of the one to make first contact. That would be you, Captain Picard.
Picard stared at the system with more than a little disbelief. He literally had the power over the gateways in his hands, and no one else in the galaxy could take control. But it was over. The galaxy could go about its business without threat of further interference. Picard signaled his ship and was transported home. Chonic had waited in the chamber for more than a day when a glowing face formed and began speaking in gibberish. Chonic could tell it was speaking to someone. Young God Picard, he assumed. He waited to see if he should do anything, but then the control before him began changing. Chonic thought it might be dying. Finally, the lights on the control went dim. The lessons he learned from Picard had filled his mind in all the hours he waited for the machine to perform its magic. Things were not always what they appeared, and that justice could take many forms. The lessons were good ones, and maybe, when he was a little older, he could teach them to others. Teaching sounded like a good thing to do, he considered, chewing on the last strip of meat. But first, there was more for him to learn. He turned to walk out of the cavern, ready to leave the city behind him and start something new. With the Enterprise en route back to the Petra fleet, the captain stood before Doral, the Petra leader.
It's over, Doral. We shut down the gateways. Your ploy to activate the gateways caused immense loss of life and great destruction. What you did from some biological imperative, but I cannot forget that there were alternatives to the approach you took. I could leave you to the mercy of a coalition court, but that would detain you when that is clearly not of use to anyone.
Doral looked up with a questioning expression as Picard continued.
You are explorers by nature, and there is much of the galaxy left to visit. I believe Mr. Data can provide you with a course that will allow you to fulfill your imperative while keeping you from interacting with any of the races you tried to dupe.
Finally, Doral spoke.
We're banished? No. The universe is teeming with life, and we're letting you go out and find it before any of us gets the chance. Turn it to your advantage and open your minds to the possibilities.
Doral nodded, taking in the words, obviously surprised that the course of action did not involve trial or death. Hours later, after the Enterprise had returned to the Petra fleet and transported Doral to his ship, Picard sat in his ready room, looking at the tricorder images taken on the world on which he found Chonic and the Master Resonators. He'd missed the youth and knew he had the power to go back and visit, but also recognized that he would never do so. The captain could never imagine an instance when circumstances would force him to use the gateways. It was a power he would hide, a secret he would no doubt take to his deathbed. Instead, he would prepare a report to Starfleet Command, complete with recommendations for reparations and commendations for selected staff, starting with Troy. The Petra ships had started forming as Data directed, and they would be gone shortly. Once they were off long-range sensors, Picard knew he would return to Earth and accept his next assignment. As with most his missions, whatever they gave him, it would never quite turn out as the mission specs spelled out. And he wouldn't have it any other way.
Star Trek: Gateways, What Lay Beyond was read by David Kay. The authors were Susan Wright, Diane Carey, Keith R.A. DiCandido, Christy Golden, Peter David, and Robert Greenberger. It was abridged for audio by George Truitt. It was recorded at Wild Oaks Recording in Sherman Oaks, California. The recording engineer was Jeff Thomas. Digital editing by Gary Fink and Jeff Thomas of Wild Oaks Recording. Sound design, mix, and mastering by Gary Fink. Original music was composed by Eve Baglarian, Carl Schertz, Carl Sharif, Richard Emmett, and Sam McCallie. The associate producer was Jessica Cassidy. Additional production assistance by Nicole Findell. Star Trek: Gateways, What Lay Beyond was produced and directed by Linda Ross of One Louder. This has been a presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio. Also available from Simon & Schuster Audio, Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, Millennium, and Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Valiant. Star Trek: Gateways, What Lay Beyond is also available in book form from Pocket Books.